Okay, so here's the deal. I was gonna do something else today, and then I got a deal that kind of came across. So you guys really liked the video I did about buying used hardware and then trying to see how we can upgrade path that into something useful. That's what we're gonna do today. The Height Y70 dual chamber ATX PC case provides users the familiar look and feel of the Y60, but with an increased component compatibility and thermal performance. With 4 unique colorways and a beautifully crafted 3-piece panoramic glass, the Y70 provides a clear window into the heart of your PC. Its expanded 4-slot vertical GPU support with an included 4.0 PCIe riser cable provides ample room for the largest graphics cards, while additional space between the edge of the card and the glass provides improved airflow. Up to 3 120mm fans can be mounted below the GPU to provide a direct path of cooling, while up to 360mm AIOs can be mounted to both the top and side. Y70 also provides up to 180mm of clearance for air coolers. To learn more about the Height Y70, visit the sponsored link in the description below. Okay, so this morning on the way to the gym at like 4 o'clock in the morning, I was just kind of perusing through the marketplace on Facebook, found some pretty decent deals locally, sent out feeler emails, lowballed a bunch of people. Got one guy that responded to me though, accepted my offer of 500 bucks, and here's what we're getting for the 500 bucks. It looks like it might have been an old iBuyPower build, I'm not sure, but anyway, it's a 11th gen Intel 11700F, so it's not a K SKU, and it does not have an iGPU, but it's still plenty of CPU. It's an i7 for gaming. 16 gigabytes of DDR4, I think it's 3200 megahertz, nothing crazy fast, but not too slow either. It's got a 6600 XT graphics card. So not the highest end graphics card, not the lowest end. It's really comparable to doing something like a 3060 type of graphics. Obviously it's AMD. And it looks like it has a very simple like box cooler type of CPU cooler on it. Nothing crazy there. Does have plenty of case fans. It has a larger case that we could definitely upgrade in, whereas like our HP Omen build, not build, but project that I sort of did the previous series on, we're really limited now to our case being what's keeping us from being able to put in bigger graphics cards or even bigger coolers and stuff. It does have a 500 gigabyte SSD. I don't know if it's an NVMe or a SATA. At that point, I don't really care. The idea behind these videos is to see whether or not we can find ourselves an amazing deal and then use that as like an entry level getting into PC for the first time. So I'm gonna go grab cash and then we're gonna go meet up with the guy. So the actual listing was at 500 bucks, or excuse me, 550. I think I could have leveraged him a little bit lower if I wanted. I think I could have offered 450. I just messaged him and said, hey, I noticed he was close. And all the other stuff I was looking at was like deep inside LA. I didn't want to have to send Nick to go and get it. I wanted to be a part of it. And so the fact that he was literally only like 5 minutes away made me think that this was a good deal. So I said, what's the cheapest you'll take right now? He said 500. Before I responded, he said, I had a guy that was gonna buy it last night. He said he drove all the way to Irvine, which is about an hour away from where we are. And then the guy ended up not buying it. So I feel like I could have leveraged that and been like, okay, maybe I'll offer 450 because he's already made like 20 bucks worth of gas round trip probably on something that didn't work out. So I feel like I could have leveraged that, but I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna be a dick. 500's fair. Let's just hope I'm not getting completely ripped off here. So, all right, here we go. We're gonna go meet him right now. I got Nick with me. I got my spider coat. That way, if anyone tries to rob me, which I hope isn't the case, which is always a risk you take when you deal with, you know, Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace and stuff. So let's hope it doesn't turn into that. That'd be a whole different video. All right, so here's the PC. I didn't even ask him to be on camera. I didn't want to do that. I did. It's a fun fact. You never know if they're gonna recognize us or not. He did not, but he's a young kid. I say young kid, he's probably in his early 20s. He and a few other friends like buy, trade, sell PCs, and they just try and like make money that way. So I told him, I said, hey, you got any like good deals in the future in terms of like a couple $100, like old PCs that maybe might be still worth something? Hit me up, because this would be a fun series to like start out super cheap, like old 9th gen and stuff. Anyway, it was initially an iBuyPower build. So you can see here, it's got one of their old cases that's like fully glass almost. Like look at the front. I think the front's really cool looking too. I think that's plastic, but anyway, let's go and open it up real quick. Like I said, he did send me videos of it running, which is something I highly recommend if you're ever gonna be doing, and I love that it still has the caution tempered glass. Anyway, I do recommend getting videos of the PCs running as best you can. You can see it's pretty dang clean inside. A little bit of dust on there. You can see we have no top fans. We have one external fan. There's dust on the fan, so it wasn't clean prior to. But it looks like we could even fit a 360 AIO up there if we wanted. Look at that. There's a ton of room up in there. Hopefully you can see it. Hey look, the 500 gigabyte drive is an NVMe. So that's nice. We don't really have to change that out. That would make a decent like OS drive. We can get another drive if we don't want to use the spinning drive for our games and such. We do have 3 intake fans on the front. Again, this thing's gonna need a good deep cleaning because of the fact that there's just dust all over it. So I'm now breathing whatever this person who was using the PC was emitting. Whatever, let's look at the back side. So yep, looks exactly like it would come from iBuyPower, still cable managed and stuff. Cannot see any information about the power supply. Here's our here's our 1 terabyte spinny drive right here. Room for SSDs back here and stuff. Even has a little fan controller built in, so that's nice. Although these fans are proprietary, which is interesting. Look at this cable right here. That's a proprietary fan cable for whatever iBuyPower was using at that time. So we have to continue to use this cable, splitter or whatever this is, as well as the fans that came with it, if we're going to like continue to use these fans. Otherwise they won't plug into this. So dang, I wish I could see which power supply that is. It's non-modular, very basic. That's fine. Check this out, the top comes off. Simply pulling that off. So getting top fans and stuff installed on there, ooh, so much dust. And getting top fans and stuff installed on there won't be hard. I would think that if you're gonna upgrade this in the future, having at least 1 exhaust fan on there would be nice. Like I feel like I would probably honestly even take off one of the front fans and I would maybe move it to an exhaust, but this is gonna be full positive pressure, which shouldn't be a bad deal. All right, let's confirm the components we can see. So here's our RAM with 16 gigabytes, I think he said a 3200. Yep, 8 gigabyte stick, DDR4, 3200 CL16 from Team Group, very basic memory, so that's what we were expecting, that's what we paid for, it's what we got. It's a very basic micro ATX motherboard though. I don't see any numbers or branding on it. It's very unlikely that it's gonna be a Z SKU. It's more than likely gonna be a B SKU for Intel, which is fine. This cooler though, probably perfectly fine for the i7, but that is a very basic cooler. Fortunately, we have room to upgrade our cooling in this, which we didn't have with our Omen PC that we recently did a video on. So anyway, let's put this back together, let's get it back to the shop, let's clean it up, let's benchmark it, let's see if we're getting full performance that we're expecting. I want to test it right now, make sure it boots and everything works before I go through the trouble of trying to clean it, to see if his video was in fact accurate. That was a very long delay, but that happens with some boards when they first receive power. They want to have the power plugged in long enough to charge the caps and then they turn on. Hey, we got immediately, because we know we have an ASRock board. Like I said, I couldn't see any branding anywhere on this board. So I still think best practices is to do a fresh install of Windows. Only because you honestly have no idea what version of Windows this is. Is it cracked? Is it nefarious in some way? Is there some hidden keyloggers or something you just don't know? That's also why I'm not connected to the internet right now for this system. So I still think it's a good idea to, at the very least, do another default reset, or go on like CD Keys Online or whatever, pay 20 bucks for a key for Windows, wherever you want to get it. I think you should install a version of the OS you trust. I don't know where this came from. I cannot guarantee anything about it. I just think that's a best practice there. All right, so what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna go ahead and install cleaning. I was gonna go ahead and start benchmarking it real quick, but I think we need to do some cleaning on this. Fortunately, it's not that bad. I'm just gonna use my brush now to clean off the blades of the fans. I don't know if the person vaped near it, but the edges of the fans seem to be sticking like a lot of the dust to it. So it could be some of the vapors and stuff of vaping near this that would make it sticky, make that stuff stick on there. Anyway, I have Phil way back there because of the dust and his asthma. This was definitely used by someone who vapes, because now that I'm hitting it with air, I can smell the flavor of the vape. I want to take the GPU out, kind of have a look-see over it. And then I want to show you guys the fan blades, how they're all kind of sticky. So you can kind of see like how the leading edge of all the fans have dust that's just stuck to it. And that's because of the vape. So you have to use a brush in here. Try and get in there and clean all this out. Also too, you can see right here, the chipset shows ASRock on there. That's covered by the GPU when the GPU is installed. So it would have been very difficult to actually see that without taking the GPU out. We do have access to another NVMe slot right here. We'd have to replace the screw though. There's no screw on there. Fortunately, they're fairly standard, but we do have another slot right there. There, it's a 600 watt RAID Max. So at least it's not like complete no-name brand crap, but it is not the greatest power supply, to be honest. So it'll get the job done though. This power supply would be perfectly fine up to like a 3080, even if we wanted. You gotta start asking yourself like, okay, what's the weak link in a system when you're spending this kind of money? And by this kind of money, I mean cheap. The power supply, I think, for the future proofing of the system is gonna be our limiting factor. Fortunately, as we upgrade this system in the next few videos, where we kind of take an upgrade path that makes the most sense for somebody that's taking on the position, I'm taking on the position of somebody it's their first PC. They saved enough money to get into a system like this, and it's the best that they can afford. You know, what's the most logical pathway to follow? I don't think power supply would be something we even have to worry about quite yet, because I think I would still do at the most like a 3070 or like a 6800 or something like that in this. Like, it doesn't have to be an NVIDIA card. In fact, if we want to find a great deal, we'd probably have to stick with AMD at that point, because there's still a lot of great deals to be had for 6000 series AMD cards. Never mind, the model number is right here next to the cooler. It's a B560M-C. So whatever that equates to. I knew it was a B series board. All right, so it's all back together. Got the sticker off. Kind of gave it a little bit of a new feel, I guess, if you have something to peel. Anyway, couple things. One, I took the filter out of the top. There's no fans up there. They're not pulling air in. We want to get as much air out as possible. So having the fan filter out will help let the positive pressure push air out. I opted to leave the front fans in with all three on intake, since it's such a restrictive front of this case. Oops, I didn't plug anything in yet while I'm pushing the power button. So I think cooling wise we'll be okay. It's not a very high watt part. It is still an i7. It's a B650 board, so it's not like it's going to be pulling all kinds of power or anything for the CPU. So I think we're gonna be fine with just kind of leaving it as is. So now that the PC smells a little more fresh, I'm not gonna even bother going to the BIOS, to be honest with you. I'm just gonna go right into Windows now, kind of do some benchmarks. I wanna see now what kind of gaming performance can we actually get with this. Actually, it boots so quick, I wanna go ahead and just start it again right now so I can give you guys the boot time. Also too, sucks, has a scratch, didn't even notice that. Should have knocked 50 more bucks off. Whatever, let's go ahead and start a stopwatch. I wanna see what the boot time is. 1, 2, 3. It's actually very fast. So it makes me think that could be an NVMe drive. I'm gonna check in the device manager in a second here to see if it's NVMe or not, but 16 seconds, not bad, especially for what we paid for this system. Okay, so let's check this out real quick. One of the things I typically do when I'm gonna do benchmarks and stuff is I'll come down here to like Windows Defender, click on that and disable it, because it does affect performance. However, the normal Windows Defender / protection stuff that we would see is not here. Now, this is much different than what we've seen on other versions of Windows. In fact, we can put it up on the screen on what it typically looks like, where we can go in and uncheck the stuff on live protection regarding like internet browsing and, you know, scanning of files and all that sort of stuff. That's not here. So this is what's making me feel like this might be a cracked version of Windows. So anyway, what I want to see right now is Windows version. I want to check the version about this Windows. Okay, so right here, Windows 11 21H2. So here's what's funny about this being 21H2 is I know there's a 22 version of Windows out. Like, and what I mean by 22 is, so basically, if you don't know, the first two numbers is the year. And then like H is like the half of the year, because they tend to do it like every 6 months kind of a thing. So the last update that this sees available to it with an accumulative update is the second half of 2021. And I know for a fact there's like 22, and I think even there's like 23s and stuff available now. This is showing when I go to update, you're up to date. So I feel like this is cracked up to a certain point, and that's why I won't check past that. So keep the OS in mind if you're buying a used computer, because again, I don't trust operating systems that I didn't install. That's just a personal thing of mine, so keep that in mind. So I just want to test to make sure the CPU is working as intended. Cinebench R23. Now 11700F, you have to understand a couple of things. One, it's not a K SKU, so it has much more conservative power limits and stuff. For instance, it can draw up to like 224. Okay. In fact, they can drop to like 224 watts for like momentary workloads, but as soon as that workload is sustained, it drops all the way down to 65. So what you're gonna see right here is the frequency should shoot up to about 4.3, 4.4 gigahertz all core. And it's so weird not seeing P core, E core, because it's prior to 12th gen. But anyway, so you can see right there, it shoot at the 4.8 or so single core, which is normal behavior. And it bounces that across all cores. But anyway, as soon as I start the process on Cinebench, you're gonna see that drop way down to like 2.9 gigahertz, so watch. So there's 4.4, 166 watts, 171 watts. Oh, there it is, 65 watts now at 2.9 gigahertz. So it slows down the core clock to keep the watts where it needs to be. And then obviously it's running very cool at that. It was 91C on the package, and then it drops all the way down to 65C now that the test is running normally. So we'll just let this complete to see what the number is. 11700F, like that's probably the only thing I would really change. You can't go to a 12th gen. So the thing about this having, like versus the other system that had a Ryzen CPU in there, we had quite a bit more SKUs available to us that we could go to, because it was like a 5600G. So we could still do 57, 5700X, 5800, 5800X, 5800X 3D, all that stuff. If the board that was in there supported it. But anyway, this is 11th gen. It's the end of the road for this socket for Intel. But we have 11700, 11700K, non-F if we wanted. But even if we went as high as like an 11900K, that'd be ridiculous to use on a B560 board. And I think earlier I said B650, but it's a B560. I'd probably max out at like 11700K at the most, just to unlock some of this with a better cooler to keep more consistent performance. Anyway, that gave us a 10,116 score. It's kind of looking like an AMD rig at this price point might have been a better benefit to us than an 11700F, but that's just CPU stuff, right? So let's see what gaming is like, because gaming is more important to us in this build. I mean, what Cinebench can do means nothing. So let's start out with some Cyberpunk. All right, so we're at 1080p. I'm using MSI Afterburner to monitor my frame rate, my temperature, my percentage use of the GPU. I don't want to see that it's bottlenecked in any way. It shouldn't with this CPU, and that's our core clock for the GPU. Graphics is set to custom. What's custom is the fact that we went to FSR 2.1 balanced, and then we are running texture quality high, crowd density medium. Everything else is like high settings by default. So that's where we are. I don't really care about the built-in benchmark run. I just want to see what real world gaming performance looks like. I think if we can get anything above, let's say 75 FPS in 1080p, that'll be a good deal for this. Because now we're at the console price, but we'll be much better than console performance in just about any game that we can throw at it.
I think once it loads, you mentioned that it's no RT, just high settings.
No, that's true, yeah. Okay, you speeding?
Yep.
Obviously, we're not running RT either in this, because the 6600 with RT isn't great. Hey look, 95 FPS. It gets a little bit smudgy with fast motion because that's just kind of how FSR is. But guess what? We paid 500 bucks and we're playing this game right now. I think we can sharpen this a little bit though. Let's see. So what if we just do like, I don't know, let's just go to 1 on sharpening. See if it just looks like sharp, smudgy mess. It almost has a little bit of a film grainy look with that 1 sharpening, which I think is kind of okay on a title like this, to be honest. It kind of gives it that like gritty sort of a, I don't know, Mad Max sort of a feel. You can see here where the lighting is with the FSR, doesn't look great. Stuff in the distance definitely looks a little smudgy, but at this point for 500 bucks, I'm playing Cyberpunk. Still at 90 FPS, let's see here. What happens if we just bump this down to like quality? Okay, we didn't take a huge FPS hit.
It's definitely sharper.
It's definitely sharper, and it's obvious now with us having sharpening set to 1. And you know what? We could spend a lot of time tuning this and going and playing this with the settings. We are set to high right now. And there's a few settings we could go in here and modify. But you know what? I'm not getting huge. I really suck at driving this car. But check it out. We're getting a solid, consistent 79 to 81 FPS. We're only at 63C on this GPU, 62. Remember, we still have the 3 front fans going and it's exactly the cooling setup as it was set up. 2500 megahertz on the core, 96% GPU. So it's probably slightly CPU bound, to be honest, but I think we're doing all right, to be honest. If look at the GPU frame rate curve right there on that graph, that's what matters most. It's pretty straight. It's a pretty straight line. Stutters are what you want to avoid, but we have a really consistent frame rate. I should have moved that chart because it's now right behind my health bar, but it's super consistent. Yeah, very playable. Like you'd be able to go here and not feel like you're just running at some ridiculous low settings. And I started with this title because this is what I expect to have some of the worst frame rate right now of any game that we're gonna test. So MSI Afterburner doesn't hook a competitive game like CSGO or CS Counter-Strike 2 in this instance. So there is a hack, not a hack, but a console that you can turn on for built-in FPS. Oh, it gave me an op immediately? Oh, okay, sure. Oh my God, oh, that's a friendly. I guess friendly fire is on. What's the FPS? Oh, dude, look at that. I didn't even realize the FPS. Look at it. It's like 300. And the mouse sensitivity is way too low for me. Okay, so let's go ultra quality. See what that does. Oh, that looks nice, actually.
150, 160s.
Keyboard, mouse sensitivity. Now we're talking. And we were at, like, I put things down to what, medium? I feel like I need to go higher. The chicken's like, ah! I was first against the bots. Okay, whatever. All right, so that's Counter-Strike 2. Another title I downloaded was Apex Legends, but I don't have this computer logged in with my EA or any of that. I still think the OS on this is sus in some way, like cracked version or whatever. But obviously we need to see, did we get a good deal? So what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna kind of shop these parts individually, see what they would add up to if I tried to source them and build it, which I don't think would be necessarily the right way to go. I think someone just getting into this, buying a used PC, would want it complete and see that it's working and running like we got with the video from the seller. So with that said, let me go ahead and go do some shopping, add up these parts and see. My brain tells me we probably saved a couple $100 maybe at this point, but the fact that it's working and running and it actually doesn't look bad. And what was our temperatures like? Because that's the other thing that we really need to see. So our core clock stayed pretty locked at about 2500 right there. Not bad at all. Our GPU usage was actually, when we look at like Cyberpunk back here, you can see we had a little bit of GPU use fluctuations, and that's because Cyberpunk actually does use the not CPU, but GPU fluctuations in usage. That's because Cyberpunk does use a lot of CPU. So I still think we were a little bit bound when it comes to CPU in Cyberpunk, but we got some pretty good FPS. Our max temperature on our core was 66 on the edge temp and 80 on the hotspot. Not bad at all. Like the global temp was max at, what is it? Max at 66 and 83 was our max edge or hotspot temp. Not bad at all. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it that I was tracking right there just with the GPU. But as you can see with the core clock, we were getting our performance right there. But you can see our core clock fluctuated with our usage, which this is our Cyberpunk version right there. Once we went into CSGO, which is a title that can just let it go, no pun intended, and that's not even CSGO, it's CS2. I'm always gonna say that. You can see our performance was not bad at all. Okay, so here's the BIOS. I didn't actually check this now that we've already not benchmarked, but played some games to show that out of the box as it was sent or picked up was playable. However, you saw when we did Cinebench, there was a significant drop in clock speed all the way down to what, 2.9 gigahertz from 4.4. That's a significant hit to performance. We were like 10,000 score, right? So I went to the BIOS and I thought, maybe I'll just check and see what we got here. So the first thing I did right now is I did put this little fan on the CPU at full speed. I think technically I could probably leave it at performance and it'd be fine, but you know what? It's such a quiet fan. Like I can't really hear it anyway, so I'm gonna leave it at full speed because XMP was not enabled. It shows it is right now, but it wasn't. So I enabled XMP profile 1. And then what I also noticed is, check this out. So I hit F8 or F6 to go into advanced mode. I do get a little bit of adjustment here. So the wattage was at auto. Now that's where it dropped down to the 65 watt base power draw for the chip after like what, it was like 5 seconds worth of turbo velocity. Actually, it's not turbo velocity boost the same way it is on this. It's a little bit different with 12th gen and higher. But anyway, this meant after a few seconds of going under load, it then drops down to whatever that base clock is because it doesn't want to cook itself to death. And that's what the 65 watt is limited to
at the 11700F, which we have right now, which is a non-K SKU. However, the ASRock motherboard does give us some base frequency boost control here by allowing us to lift what that new wattage baseline is gonna be. So we can literally nearly double that by going from 65, which is what auto is, to 125. So what it's gonna allow us to do is keep our base clock as high as possible. Now, we hit 170 watts for that momentary peak in power draw and demand for the CPU when all core is triggered. However, as you saw, it went down to 65. Now in games like Cyberpunk, I know for a fact the CPU is doing more because we saw the fact that the GPU is at like 95, 96%, which means we were only a couple of percent CPU bound. But any lift we can do right now for the CPU by making the RAM go to XMP profile and keeping the boost clocks higher means we're gonna get better performance. So our previous best score was a 10,116 with this 11700F. You can see we're kind of sitting at like between 4.5 and 4.8 on the cores right now with basically no load. It's at 0.9% load, 0.6. So let's go ahead and start this. Let's keep an eye over here at what's happening. So our temperature, so here's our power draw, 161 watts currently. It's at 79C, 80C, 82, 165 watts. So you see we're now keeping our core clock. There's 4.4, right? 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 90, 91, 92. We're still at 170 watts. As temp goes up, wattage will go up too, unfortunately. Because there's wattage lost through heat, so it has to increase. Anyway, 99, okay, we're now hitting 100C. We're now gonna thermal throttle a little bit, right? 170 watts still. 4.3 all core, 4.2 all core, 4.3, 4.2, 4.2. Still at 100C, the cores are all in the high 90s. Okay, there's 4.1 all core, still hanging on 4.1. Remember before we would have been deep into the 2.9 already. All right, so that was one run. That just gave us a score of a 13,836. So we just improved the performance, geez, by almost, what, 40% on that score. So from a 10,100 to a 13,836, it's like, what, 37% or something like that. It's a huge improvement on Cinebench. If we could get this under control temperature-wise, that tells me we could hold that 4.4 the entire time and bump that up into the 14,000 range, which now we're talking a solid 40% improvement. If we were to just put like a $20 cooler on here that's better than this thing. That won't be a part of today's video. That'll be a part of the next video where we say, what are the logical upgrades for this now? But what I wanna see right now is what did our improvements do for us regarding performance? Okay, so when it comes to Cyberpunk, not really much of a change. You can see our CPU usage, our GPU usage is still at like 96, 97. Our frequency is still the same, 91, 92 FPS. But what I have on here is also Helldivers 2, which is another very popular title. Might be a title someone decides like, I don't have a console, I don't have a PC, I wanna try this game out. So for $500 used build, can we play something like Helldivers at a reasonable high settings and still get good FPS? Okay, so I'm gonna go from render scale from ultra quality, which is where it put it, down to, oh, we'll just do quality. Oh, I hear bugs. Oh, ah! Dude, very playable. This is actually pretty awesome to be playing this game. Yep, very playable. All right, let's get out of here. Let's talk about this here. Yes, there's Alt F4 out of my own game. So, 500 bucks, 11700F, RX 6600, 16 gigabytes of 3200 megahertz DDR4, 4 case fans, a shitty little CPU fan, but whatever, a 600 watt power supply. I don't know what the rating was on it. It didn't even say, it just showed us I might have said actually, but I only saw 600 watts. A 500 gigabyte NVMe SSD, which by the way, I installed all these games on. So to give you an idea of how much space I would have left with having Cyberpunk, Helldivers 2, Apex Legends is on here. We didn't run it because I don't have an account set up for that. And Counter-Strike 2, plus the OS, we have 145 gigabytes still free. So I still don't think the 1 terabyte hard drive to me is like that much of an incentive. Like that's just a bonus. You could keep like music on there, you can keep pictures on there, just bulk storage. Things that need to load fast, like games and stuff. As you can see, I've got 4 big titles on here. All of them are like over 60 to 70 gigabytes to install. And you can see we still have 148 gigs left on our main drive. So obviously we would want to make sure we keep that only filled with games that we're actively playing. I think this is a heck of a build for 500 bucks. Now, one thing I didn't do is add up all the costs of the parts individually. That's a different kind of build. That's a different kind of video. I think when you're shopping for parts to build it yourself, this is for the person that wants one that's assembled and working. But I don't think you could build this system very easily for the 500 bucks we have for this. Especially since we have 4 case fans and a graphics card and power supply, everything's installed, OS is on it and working. Again, still not 100% positive that that's cracked or not. It does say it's retail when I look up the installation on it, but again, I have no idea if it's a legit copy of Windows or not. I don't know how many people are going to care about that, but something to point out. But anyway, there you go, guys. Sound off down below what you feel about this build. Do you think it was worth 500 bucks? And do you want to see us upgrade it like we did in our last video? I think that's the series people are interested in, is ultra low cost entry point into gaming PCs and where to go from there. All right, guys, thanks for watching. As always, we'll see you in the next one.